excited here to have David Hess with us from his company trustin.com. We have so much to talk to David about today that we have so much to cover. So David, thank you so much for coming on my show today.
It's great to be here.
Good. Hey, so our buddy Nelson Olavarrieta introduced us. He's another guy playing in the tech field. And I met Nelson actually with a meetup group. I'm sure you've been to a few meetups in your day.
Absolutely.
So I met Nelson, and he came to some of my meetups that I had created. It was like speed dating, but it was speed networking. So we could get to know each other really quickly, get in a conversation out of a conversation, and that's how I met Nelson. And I've stayed in touch with him ever since I met him. And he said, "Hey, Becca, you've got to talk to this guy, David," because at the time I'm serving, and I still serve to some extent, senior citizens and baby boomers in computer tutoring and computer training for all those newbies out there. And he said, "Gosh," he's like, "David's got this tool. You need to know about this tool because this is the next step for the seniors in your business as they get online." So what I want you to do is we tell our listeners just in a nutshell what Trustin is, what your business is.
Yeah, Trustin is a product. It's a web application, and it's really targeting end users who are non-technical. There's a lot of folks out there that are struggling with a lot of problems staying safe online. And really, we take two approaches to it. First of all, we help you with your usernames and passwords. We make it very simple to log into our website with just one click. And the second thing is we give you great tools for making sure that the websites that you're interacting with are trustworthy, whether or not you really should be sharing your private information with them.
Okay, so in that little bit of a nutshell, I'm going to say this is absolutely brilliant. So one of my biggest challenges in training is, first of all, I would sit down with a client, and they would give me their password right away. "Oh, my password is 1234556," and I'm like, "Oh my goodness." And then second of all, not only was it 1234556, but they would give it to me, and I'm like, "That's great. I'm so glad you trust me." But for me, a password is a very private thing, and if you're using 1234556 on this, I'm guessing you're probably using that same password somewhere else. And so I really feel that you're really answering this question of or this problem of, okay, my mom is online or my grandma's online. This is a brand new thing for her, and this isn't. I'm not being condescending, but our generations are different from America's greatest generation. They didn't grow up with a computer in their hand. They didn't go to school with one. They didn't even have to have one in college. And then, not only that, they didn't necessarily have to train their children on computers. And so those are like the missing, to me, that's where learning really happens. It's the hands-on experience. I look at my little nieces and nephews who are 6 years old and throw an iPad in their hand, no problem. So it's the experience. The seniors I work with didn't have that. And that's pretty normal if you don't have it. But the other thing is they didn't train their children. And so that is that second part of where learning happens. So I think what you've done is really brilliant and can help so many families, so many people, so many businesses, like the business I had and other computer tutor for senior type businesses out there. So let's back up a little bit, knowing what you do and how awesome it is. How did you... you have to understand, like, this is personal to me. So this is something that I have a lot of personal experience with. So I get very passionate about it. But so let's back up, and I want to know how did you get here? I mean, I have my story of how I got to my computer tutor for senior business, but how did you get here? What's your background? Are you an entrepreneur? Are you a technology superstar? What's up?
Well, I think you could call me a serial entrepreneur. I've been
Awesome.
doing this for about 12 years now. In 2000, I left Texas A&M University. I got my bachelor's and my master's there in computer science. Okay. And then I was staff there at the university. I was associate director for networking, and we managed one. At the time, it was in the top 10 enterprise networks of the entire country. We had 55,000 users. We had over 25,000 computers networking into over 160 buildings. It was a very large enterprise effort. I learned a lot there about service and a lot about computer security. I left there in 2000, came here to Dallas, and I've been in the Dallas area. I'm a Texas native, and I love Texas. I worked at a company here called Celion Networks. It was a startup company, and we were working on telecommunications gear. In 2005, that ended, and I started my first company called Versend, and I partnered with a friend of mine, and we developed some technology that led me into working with a company called Fish Technologies. And I ended up there as CTO. We were doing technology for marketing experiences. So I did that for about 5 years or so, and then in January of this past year, I decided to return back to doing my own company again. I kind of get this itch every 4.5 years or so to kind of go scratch my entrepreneurial itch. So I went off and started a company and worked on this product called TrustIn. And TrustIn to me is kind of a returning back to the security issues that I was working on back in the university days. One of the reasons why I left the university and went out in the entrepreneurial world is I got a bit frustrated with the security problems that are out there. It's a lot of cyclical, hackers break in, we try and fix it, and then the hackers break in again, we try and fix it. It just goes around and around and around. Yeah. And so one of the things I thought about when I left and decided to take another chance at this entrepreneurial stint is to rethink that problem a little bit. And I think in the rethinking of it, it has a lot to do with getting the end user more involved in what's going on. Our industry as a whole tends to treat end users as just, they just need training wheels. They don't really need to be informed about what they're doing. But the truth of the matter is you cannot stay safe on the internet unless you have some understanding of what's going on and stay informed about what's happening. So that's a lot of the passion and philosophy behind why I've built this product today.
And I love your background, especially I love what you said about entrepreneurial itch. It's something that I've just decided that I'm gonna run with. So I understand coming back to it, because the other thing as an entrepreneur is you can see a problem like you noticed that kept showing up, and you can decide without anyone telling you what to do, when to do it, and you can take it really by the horns and figure out, how am I going to solve this problem? And I think that we also have the same passion when it comes to the end user. And that'll get my blood boiling. I feel that the end user is slightly forgotten about because profits get in the way. And now of course we need profits, but how can we better cater to this end user? And if we look at the internet and the history, it seems like it's the next big thing. I don't like to think about fearful things in the world, but if there was the next big horrific thing that's going to happen, it's going to involve major security issues. Yes. And the internet. Not to totally be a buzzkill, but I don't see a lot of tech companies taking this into consideration. It's like, okay, here's my awesome software, here's my awesome game. And in fact, a story I have, I was giving a presentation to an independent living center. And, everyone's asking me, it was a little bit of Q&A at the end, and I had pretty much the normal questions, a lot of curiosity, and it was awesome. And then I had this one woman in the back, and she said, look, here's the deal. She was about 88, 89, 90 years old, somewhere in there, and she said, here's the deal. I play World of Warcraft. And I'm like, oh my goodness, please, I'm not a gamer, so I wasn't sure what question she was going to ask me, because there was no way I was going to answer. But where she went with the story is she said, I play World of Warcraft, and I was on the game, and someone got on and asked me for my credit card number. Oh, and I gave it to him. I thought, oh, crap.
Yep. That's social engineering 101. Happens a lot.
Yeah, and so that was a real that and many other moments. But I thought, okay, so this woman was advanced and intrigued to play World of Warcraft. Good for her. That's her hobby. That's her thing. But she didn't know what to do when someone asked for her credit card number. She gave it to them because she trusted them. Just back in the days when we all had home phones, and some of us still do, and we get on the phone and someone would ask us for a credit card number. Nowadays we know, oh my gosh, not only do we probably not have home phones, but we would never do that. So now it's being introduced online. And again, people feel like, oh, I better give it to, and especially seniors, I feel don't necessarily have a certain guard up. And so when they get online, there's rose-colored glasses or something, and there's not a push from the company not too many companies, well, until I found yours, to have a push for security.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually a problem industry-wide. You were talking earlier about how it seems like a lot of users' needs are being looked over. And I see it kind of as like a myopia. The industry tends to be kind of inward-looking rather than outward-looking. And it's just not really focusing on what a lot of average users are having to deal with. So, like in this case, when you're talking about the World of Warcraft and giving over the credit card number, I mean, that's a very common story. And someone who's in the industry goes, wow, how could you ever do that? But when you think of it from the user's perspective, I mean, they don't understand the way the Internet connects people together over great distances and creates all kinds of ways for people with bad intent to reach you in very simple ways. And so you have to think of it like you're walking down the street and you see a stranger and they walk up to you and ask you for a credit card number. That's the exact same thing online, but somehow because of its the technology nature, people give it an automatic credence that they wouldn't in the real world. And that's the thing that I'm really working on, is trying to help people to determine that difference and really educate them on it and give them tools to help them do it better with also.
Yeah, I think it really comes from the education, which is what you're doing, and I love your blog, by the way, and that's definitely one way I believe that our audience, this aging in place audience, this techpreneur audience that I speak to, blogging is a great way to get your expertise that you have out to your audience. And just, a side note, not even a side note, a big note about your website. When I was on your website, I noticed something different, and this is something else that I think you really thought about your end user. So trust in, and guys, by the way, I'm going to leave all of David's contact information. He's going to mention it at the end of this interview. It's also going to be listed, so you'll have every way to reach out to him. But the website is trust-in.com, and it's INN, like a hotel inn, trustin.com. So just a place to go and have all those secure passwords. But it's soft on the eyes. And so I don't know many people other than, very, very few companies right now that are considering what eyes, because it's our eyeballs that are viewing the site, are reading my site. Who is coming? Is it the 15-year-old? I don't think a 15-year-old is probably going to come to your site. They might end up on it. This is, me generally speaking, but you're targeting a niche, and your niche is not an average age of 18. Every part of our body is always aging, and the eyes, what we need to see this website, this is the bottom line of our business, right? So there's a softness, but there's also a bit of a larger font that I noticed on your, without having to do the Control Plus trick or zoom in with my Mac trackpad. It's already large enough to see, and that's something that I rarely see, and I'm going to tell you, pisses me off that isn't there. I'm like, this is your business, right? You want people to read your website to see what you have to say, then shit, make it a little bit bigger, make it a little bit softer. So especially, so I want to give you props for doing that. Pretty awesome.
Thank you.
And then I was reading one of your blog, not one of your last one, one of them a few months ago or a few weeks ago, called Cybercrime Goes McDonald's. So tell me, give us a little bit of a nutshell of some of the things you talk about, maybe what the Cybercrime Goes McDonald's. That was a very intriguing title to me.
Yeah, sure. One of the things I try and do with that blog is to take a lot of technical subjects, and this is kind of my whole philosophy behind my company and behind the product Trust In, is to take really technical subjects and distill them down into the thing that's really important and understandable to everyday users so they can kind of get something out of it. So what do I mean by that? Cybercrime Goes McDonald's. Well, when you think of McDonald's, that is probably the best definition of commodity food anywhere, right? It's the same thing here. It's the same thing if you go to a McDonald's in Russia, if you go to a McDonald's in Europe, right? And it's done in mass quantities. It's very commoditized is the word. Yeah. So that's a way of thinking about what's happening right now in the cybercrime world. What they're doing now is it's not just little lone hackers doing things, and it's not just small individuals, groups of cyber criminals doing things either. they're actually starting to develop markets out there where they're trading tools and techniques. And they're developing pricing structures, and they're developing basically the equivalent of like a stock market and exchange markets like that out there.
Wait.
Yes.
What you're saying? Okay. This is. If you guys don't have a reason to go read David's blog right now, especially if you have a parent or grandparent getting online for the first time and did not grow up with technology, please go read this blog. First of all, second of all. What? So there's a business.
Absolutely.
So they're entrepreneurs just like you and I, except
absolutely
they're more of like the drug dealer type.
Exactly. Yeah. This is basically the rise of the gangs of Chicago and the gangs of New York, and the organized criminal syndicates are on the rise on the internet today. And it's actually getting an element of like financial markets in it too, because they're creating these markets where they can go and trade techniques and tools. And what's even scarier is that the prices are really pretty low. They're like McDonald's prices. We're talking $50, $60 to get something that can break you into a bunch of different computers.
Wow. And so I would say I'm an expert in training seniors and baby boomers on computers. And I know there's a lot of bad stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know, for me, being very involved in computers, I didn't know that this was so organized. So imagine our listeners right now, our audience. Do you think they know about this? Do you think they have any idea? So when they're pushing, here's where I get a little bit frustrated is that, think of like a 16-year-old and they get their car and there's driver's lessons. Unless you're on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, you're not getting a Range Rover or Mercedes. So, you prepare them with a nice big Buick or a Volvo, something super safe.
Something keeps them safe.
Yeah, you give them driver's lessons. You get them super prepared. You worry all the time, but none of that, like that analogy compared to your grandma, your mom, you throw them like, oh, you gotta have this. It's all I ever hear is you gotta have the latest whatever, right? iPad, smartphone, and they push it at them, and then they get mocked. I find that the boomer and senior community gets mocked if they're not on a certain technology. And the senior citizen doesn't know all this bad stuff, but their gut is screaming, I only want to do this, and if I don't know, I don't want to get involved in that. So I feel like they almost know, they're aware that there's something out there but they're getting pushed by the younger generation, and it really,
Well, your analogy, I think, was perfect. When you talk about driving and the types of things that we go through as a society, we train people, we give them safe cars, and we have all kinds of traffic laws, and we spend so much energy making that process smooth and safe for society in general.
Yep.
And we don't do it at all when it comes to computers. Basically, you're just given a device and said, get out there and have fun. And then the technology industry on the other side says, well, we think we can protect you, but we're going to do it training wheel style. We're not going to tell you how the car works. We're not going to tell you the right way to safely drive it. We're just going to put training wheels on and say, don't worry about it, have fun. And it just doesn't work, and it's getting worse. It's getting worse daily.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's also more entrepreneurs daily. So that means there's creation of new products. There's geotags on everything. I watch just for the younger generation, I watch my nieces and nephews get onto games. I wonder if they know that there's actually geotags and geolocation on those games, or Instagram. I'm looking at one of my niece's Instagram profiles, and she has pretty much every bit of information on there. And so, nothing against her parents. Sorry, those are my relatives, but they just don't know. And so when you know better, you do better. And that's why having someone like you on to talk to my viewers and say, look, there's got to be a better way. And this is really the why you created your business. So let me segue a little bit about you as a business person and being an entrepreneur. And there is I think this is exciting to talk about, that you get to solve whatever problem you want to. And you get to look at the world and say, okay, what problems are out there? Security. How do I get to solve it? So that's going to be really exciting for you. Tell me, how do you start your day as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I probably do an immense amount of reading every day. It is probably the number one thing that I start off doing and do all day long. I read a lot of technology forums. There's one called Hacker News. It's really technical, but it's also very entrepreneurial. It's a lot of folks in Silicon Valley that are out there doing things. And it provides both inspiration, it provides information about what's happening. And I also follow a lot of security blogs, too, and a lot of security articles and magazines, things of that nature, both from current events, what's happening, what's the latest thing going on in the cybercrime community, to also what's happening technology-wise. As a product maker, I want to be on the cutting edge, and I want Trustin to be on the cutting edge and stay on the cutting edge in terms of providing good services to people. So it's really reading. I'm just reading constantly. I use basically a news reader, not Google Reader, but there's a really great one for iOS. Okay. I'm not thinking of the name of the moment, but it's what I do most of the time is reading.
Yeah, I feel that education. I spend so much time in a day. I mean, most people think, oh, you're a business owner. You've got the whole day. Let's do lunch and let's do. Yeah. And I'm thinking, well, I definitely have to eat lunch. However, there's a lot that goes into this. So yes, I have all the freedom. I also have a husband, so I like to have some sort of close to my day, or at least some sort of like dinner break, so I can sit down, try to make him dinner.
Yeah, exactly. I'm the same way. My wife and I always spend quality time at the end of the day. She works out of the house, I work in the house, and she comes home, we have a great dinner and good time to reconnect, and then a lot of times I get right back to reading. I'm back on my iPad and reading news constantly, staying up to date with things.
I think my husband and I, we do the same thing. We've got, maybe if it's warm enough or not too hot, depending, I'm in Dallas, so you know how it is, sometimes it's too hot, it's too cold. We have 2 huge dogs, and they're always ready for a nice, I can't even say it because they're outside of this studio, WALK. But, having that downtime, and also I feel that it's important. When I was working 9 to 5, I think there is although we always felt that we could work more and working 7 days a week, but I think that having some downtime, it actually recharges you. And it's very hard. For me, I've just always loved working. I've always loved creating and connecting. And it's hard for me to actually stop, because I think that there's something more that I can do. What I'm finding out, and what I implement no matter what, is to stop. Stop. Maybe it stop my mind, turn everything off, and it doesn't mean drown myself in TV. It's just stop, maybe go for a walk, reconnect with nature. And
I completely agree that there really has to be some downtime, and I enforce some pretty good weekends on myself to really come back, because you burn out. And you're constantly saying, because it's a small company and there's a lot of responsibility, and you're trying to build something with a large amount of value, you're always thinking about what's the next thing you can do and what you can work on, and you feel like you need to do it right then, because every minute is precious. But what you end up finding is that over time it will sap your motivation, and it will sap your creative juices. Yes. And you've really got to have time to recharge those, and you'll be amazed how much more productive you can be in the long run, if you keep that in mind and really pay attention to it.
I couldn't agree more. So do you? Okay, so for me though, I know the value of just at 5 o'clock just stopping, and clients know I'm not returning your calls or emails after 5 o'clock. I didn't always train them right away, but I've got them trained, and it's really for the best. But do you struggle? Like at 5 o'clock, I'll stop and just whatever, start making dinner or go out to the grocery store, and that's where my creative juices can flow in the kitchen. And then I have some downtime. If it's Wednesday night, my husband and I always watch Modern Family together, so that's like our little fun thing to do. Or maybe we'll go to the movies, and I just have some downtime. Then around 8 o'clock, 8:30, I'll hit the computer, start reading the blog, start working on editing some different things of mine. Do you find like at that 5 o'clock time it's hard to turn it off? Because I certainly do.
Yeah, it depends kind of what mode I'm in. At being a technology company, I do a lot of technology development, a lot of coding and software, things of that nature. Yeah. And that's a different kind of work than what I'm doing primarily now, which is a lot of marketing, a lot of outreach, a lot of customer development. The development part of it is pretty exhausting, because you end up with a really strong concentration and focus throughout the day. And by the time 5 o'clock rolls around, you're pretty much ready to hang it up and at least take a break for a little while. But what I find is with the marketing and the social side of it and the reading and the blogging and so forth, that's a lot softer, and it's a lot harder to be kind of disciplined about stepping away from it. And I do, when my wife comes home, that's, all right, it's time to go have some dinner and spend some good quality time together. And then later on in the evening, I'll go through some of the soft things. During the day, I'll be doing a lot of social marketing, social networking, things of that nature. And then in the evenings, I'll be doing a lot of reading. So it's a little bit softer kind of work. But of getting away and getting the creative juices going again, I'm the same way. It's movies. It's things like that, kind of escapism, book reading and things of that nature.
Yeah, I feel like at the end, what drives me to have that downtime is that I know that it works. And so I know that the result will be there, and I agree also with that softer activities, because I feel nighttime is actually my more creative. I think that's when maybe the Starbucks kicks in, or like the caffeine just accumulates, and then my mind is just full-blown cranking with ideas that I have to find ways to say, okay, you know what, you do have to get sleep. You do need to get your adrenals need to rest. There's a physiological component to being successful. So let's choose the activities to tone it down so I could fall asleep at a decent hour and not get overcharged. I mean, even last night I found myself, I think I had coffee a little too late in the day, and then I was toying around with some different ideas for video hosting and ended up getting so overwhelmed. I just got myself into this, and I think other entrepreneurs, I don't know if you've ever gotten there, and I'm just going to admit it to everybody, but I got myself into overwhelm that it almost stopped me, and I knew this is absolute crazy talk. There's always a way. As Marie Forleo says, everything is figure-outable, which I love that quote. So turn off the computer, chill out, and
the harder you work and the further you push it in the evening, the more tired you're getting. And tired people, the emotions get a little bit more raw, it takes a lot of introspection to recognize that and recognize that's what it is, and then have the discipline to kind of step away and say, you know what, it's going to look different tomorrow. And with a good night's sleep and coming back at it fresh, you're going to have a whole different experience going at it again.
Yeah, I agree. So let me ask you about, you mentioned your marketing, and you do a lot of like the social marketing during the day. You take a little softer at night, do some reading. Is there a tool, one tool that you want to, I mean, we all have our different toolbox. What's a tool that you can offer our audience, someone else who is doing exactly what we're doing, starting a business, trying to reach more customers? Is there a tool that you can suggest?
Yeah, the one that I think is probably good to talk about in this situation is HootSuite, H-O-O-T Suite. And it's a really great tool because what it does is it integrates your social media channels or outlets together into one interface. So we have a Twitter account, trust_in. We have a Facebook page, trustin page. And those are all connected together into Hootsuite. And then one of the best things you can do with it is you can schedule posts. So a lot of folks get used to a certain pattern of notifications and information coming from you as a channel. And it's almost like seeing the news at 5 o'clock every day, right? You get accustomed to it. And one of the easiest ways to develop that pattern and to do it is to use something like Hootsuite, because you don't have to build your schedule around trying to get that kind of pattern and repetition going into your social channels. So you can go in there and say, you know what, I'm going to spend a couple of hours and I'm going to set up posts or tweets for the next week or two. And you can schedule what time of day they're going to go out. You can put the content in there and things of that nature. And you can also do posts to Facebook through here also, to your Facebook page. You can schedule those. And you can actually, when you see it laid out that way, you can develop kind of themes and think about what you're talking about in terms of a trend. And then overall, again, it just goes back to you set up repetition, you set up things that people get comfortable with and they get used to, and that's part of them interacting with and getting value out of your social channels.
So that's a good tool, because being online, and I was explaining, my husband is, worked at the same company for 20 plus years, and so I'll have very short discussions with him to not completely bore him. There's two different people in the world, and I'm just I love risk, and I love being an entrepreneur. So, so I was explaining to him the difference between having a physical store and having an online store. And there's so much ease and so many free tools to get your business online.
Absolutely.
But the difference with a physical store, now there's overhead, you've got to have employees and rent and a physical space that you have to keep up and all the bills and obviously overhead with that.
Mm-hmm.
But when someone's driving down the street, they can see you.
Yep.
There are I don't know how many websites are out there, millions, billions of websites, and more created every single day. I don't know the exact statistics. I'm gonna have to find that out for everybody. But it's different. And so the role that HootSuite, this great tool that you brought up, in social media play into it is you've got to have presence. And not only do you have to have presence, it needs to be consistent. So I've met a lot of people in networking groups, and I don't do networking anymore because my business is more online. But they would show up once, and then maybe 4 months later they'd show up again. Well, the way to fully build a practice is to have consistent presence in your business. So when we switch to that online, HootSuite allows you to be more omnipresent. And our goal is to, be on the blogs, Twitter, Facebook, and HootSuite is this CRM. It's a database where you're able, because I use it too, you're able to see side by side, and you're also able to schedule. Now, the one thing that I believe about social media is that it is social. So I've interacted with you with tweets. I almost said with Tweety. I've been watching too much of the Golden Sisters on the Oprah Network, which is a good show, by the way. Love to have those gals on. But I use HootSuite as well, but for some of those middle of the night tweets and maybe LinkedIn status updates. So I use it to fill in the blanks to make sure that presence is happening with someone who's maybe over in New Zealand or working all night, or maybe it's a doctor who works the night shift and is, that they can keep up with it. So it's really, how can you be everywhere as authentically as possible? Now, HootSuite isn't about, I'm sure you don't just put it on there and forget about it because you interact with me when I tweet you.
Mm-hmm. So, it's a bit of both. You really have to manage both. You have to stay, it's sort of like when you're broadcasting and sending and creating content and pushing it out, HootSuite is a great place to do it. But when you're interacting with folks and monitoring things, you still have to be in the native tools also. So I keep a Twitter window open throughout the day and a Facebook page and watch for notifications of people interacting. And then I immediately, because one of the worst things that you can have happen is someone think that they can interact with your company, attempt to, and get silence or dead air back.
Yes.
That's the worst feelings out there. And so what I really strive to do is anyone who interacts with my company in any way, I try and give them immediate response back and interactivity back so that they know that there's someone there, that it's someone who's capable, legitimate, and willing to talk with them and engage them and help them with whatever's bothering them.
Yeah, absolutely. Gary Vaynerchuk, out in New Jersey, he's a founder of Wine Library TV, VaynerMedia, and he said, look, it's really, you've got to be on there. Doesn't mean everything. No, it's not about Facebook. It's not about Twitter. It's not about LinkedIn. Those things can all change, and God knows marketers ruin everything. So it will all change. Yeah. But it's a means to an end to build your tribe, and so he is on there every day answering every single tweet, every single Facebook message, because this is how this groundswell for him has built, and he is a millionaire working towards billionaire so he can buy the New York Jets. So, people ask me, well, we gotta have big dreams, right? To make these things happen and keep us motivated every day. But, people ask me every day, especially when I'm training them, like, am I really going to find business on social media? Yeah, you are, but you're not going to find it with one tweet. If you were to go advertise in a magazine, most likely they're not going to give you the option for a one-time advertisement. If they do, some of them definitely do. It's going to be a hell of a lot of money for that one shot, for that advertisement. Well, social media is social. It's not just a one-time thing. It's really about building that community. And if you can reach out to people 24/7, then that's where the word of mouth is going to be. What we're doing right now, the more people can get familiar with, okay, who is David Hess? Who is the man behind this business, Trust In? the more they're going to understand who you are and your passion behind it. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, in terms of building the tribe, I love that phrase, the way you put it. It really is about putting value out there. With a lot of the tweets that I do, it's usually referring to some article. Because what I do is, as I'm reading throughout the day, I'm calling out and pulling out articles that I think are relevant to everyday users. I'm leaving all the technical jargon out. I'm trying to pick articles that aren't heavy in jargon.
Yep.
And then I'll usually summarize it and pull out some really interesting point that's buried in the article. And that's what goes out in the tweet. So I'm trying to give people some good value there and then engage them afterwards. And I think it's a combination of those two things that really creates that tribe, creates that bonding with folks, and really shows them that there's value to the interaction.
Yeah, if there's no value, they're not coming back. And so what I find a lot of people online is they're hiding behind their computer screen and they're giving something, maybe it's not even in their own voice, and they just push it out there. And so if the value's not there and then there's no engagement, every single person who started following me on Twitter, I've reached out. Thank you. I appreciate it, because they took the time to follow me. So it's just at this really ground roots level that it's really about recognizing who's in your tribe. Yes, it takes a lot of time. So this does change how I market my business. So for example, if I were to go to a Chamber of Commerce meeting in Dallas, that would take, maybe 30 minutes to get there. Maybe 30 minutes for a little bit of just social time, maybe an hour for a meeting, and then coming back. So maybe 2.5 hours, and then I'm done with it. Maybe meet up with someone after for coffee. So we were talking about 3 hours, where this social media it's an ongoing. So when you go online, it's ongoing to keep in touch with that tribe. So HootSuite is a great tool, and I'm glad that you brought that up. So the next thing I want to talk about is really who, because you do a lot of reading, I do a lot of reading, both actual books, real like paper books and Kindle books. Who have you found out there that you really, I don't know if you can narrow it down to one person, but who's your inspiration? Who do you admire out there right now, or who do you admire in your childhood that got you to be this cool entrepreneur guy?
Yeah, I think I'll split it up into two answers, because I actually have two different answers for two different aspects of it. The first one I'll talk about is from kind of a reading and learning about business and learning about the best ways to grow a company. There's a guy named Eric Ries, R-I-E-S, and he wrote a book called The Lean Startup. And it's gaining a lot of popularity out in Silicon Valley and amongst startups in general. But it's the concept of how you really can bootstrap a company and make it into something really spectacular and really valuable to people. And it really opened the eyes for me in terms of so many companies. You go in there and they say, okay, you got to have a business plan. You got to go after VC money. You got to go do this. You got to go do that. And it sounds really overwhelming. And what he does is he steps back and says, you know what? If you think you can write a business plan on day one of a company that's going to have any relevance on day two, you're kidding yourself. It's really all about doing experimentation, doing measurement, and making smart adjustments day by day. And what you learn from that is basically building a company is really about having a vision and then iterating on it on day by day. And you just make it better each day, one point at a time. And you do it with discipline, and you do it with direction, and you can build value in a company. And it was really pretty eye-opening, and it's pretty inspirational when you look at the problem that way.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the other one, from an inspirational perspective, and I know this may sound like a cop-out, because I'm sure it's for a lot of folks, but it's Steve Jobs. I mean, he's passed away now, but it's also probably an angle that other folks don't think of, because a lot of folks thought he was a genius, and he could invent all these products. But that's not what I think of him. I don't really think he was a genius. What I think he was a very good businessman. I think a lot of what he did at Apple and a lot of the inspiration behind the products that have come out of Apple were not so much because he was so smart, but because he used good business practices, and he knew how to build a product that was really designed for users, that really made users happy. And he really knew how to make long-term strategic decisions in terms of business structure, and he really knew how to read the industry and read the trends going on in the industry. And that's what I think his real gift was that business talent. And that's what inspires me in him. The one thing that I don't like about him was his acerbic personality. He was always pretty rough around the edges, and I didn't ever think that was really necessary. But in terms of a businessman, he is definitely my inspiration.
Yeah, he is. He really, for me, he had a bit of that spiritual component too that I'm drawn to, and so it's a little bit to run a business. Well, you've got to be a little bit crazy to take that leap, and so I feel in my business it's been knowing more business. I study probably more on business than I did my actual craft. And then also the mindset component of it as well. So it is a very lonely world out here. And I think it's becoming less lonely because of things like the internet and because of there are more entrepreneurs online out there to connect with. So really working on that mindset, what tools, whether it be meditation, yoga, go out to California and you'll find 20 million different tools you can use to find your inner peace. But I think it's a little bit, for me, it's a little bit of the balance. And so I'm also drawn to Steve Jobs because of that. Yeah, his personality was definitely abrasive. I think much more abrasive than he needed to be. But, we're all on our own journey. And so that's what he brought to the table during his lifetime. But he brought us some great things by leveraging and delegating and outsourcing. And so there's so much more we can learn from Steve Jobs than just the final product. It's so much more behind the scenes, and his belief and his passion. I found that really one of my favorite quotes is, when you commit and declare, providence moves. And I don't even know who that's from. I've heard it from different places. I don't know if you've heard that before, but it's really that. I feel that Steve had that. He absolutely committed to this exceptional, beautifully designed product, quality product. And then when he committed and he declared it, providence obviously moved for him.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a key part of leadership in any organization, is the ability to confidently set goals with a clear vision and stick to them. And it actually sounds simple when you say it. It's really hard in practice in large organizations. And for him to be able to pull that off inside of a company as large as Apple for as long as he did, as he was around, and hopefully he's built a culture there where it's going to continue, it really is an amazing accomplishment in American business history.
Absolutely agreed. I think you're going to resonate with a lot of people with mentioning Steve. So, well, let's get back to your business, and I want to dive in just a little bit deeper. So we sort of know who you are, what drives you. So let's talk about more of the why. And starting with the why, as Simon Sinek always says, why should someone, or maybe it's an adult child or a business, it might be an independent living center who's putting in a computer lab for the first time. I know Sunrise Community Centers are putting in some great technology labs. I think you'd be a great person for them to consult with, so that they can have a fantastic user experience for their residents and just stand out from the rest, as many others. So why should someone come to your site? Why should someone? How does someone sign up and become a member or a customer with your business?
I would step back to what you mentioned earlier in your example about the password 123456. That actually is the most common password out there on the internet. It's a sad state of affairs, and I think that's where you've really got to start, is fixing that problem. There's been a development over the last year or so that not only are passwords like that dangerous, but basically we're to the point now where any password that you can possibly memorize is now weak and can be broken by hackers. So what we're moving to pretty quickly is to the point where everyone should have a different, completely random password for every website.
Yes.
That trend is starting. It's not going to slow down. It's only going to accelerate.
But wait a second. That's a lot. So you're telling me for every single website application, I need a completely different website, and I need to remember all of them.
You don't need to remember them, and that's what we help solve. But you should have different passwords, because there's two things going on. There's all of us users out here in the real world trying to manage these passwords, and people are trying to social engineer us. Like on a forum in the World of Warcraft, they'll try and trick us into giving them their password. At the same time, we're interacting with a lot of different companies' websites. And each of those websites is doing different things to manage your passwords and manage your accounts over there. And as you've seen in the news over the past year, places like LinkedIn had a very large breach of their password database, and a couple of other sites have had them over the year, and those are just going to continue. So in order to manage that problem and keep yourself safe, you really can't use the same password on two different websites, because if one website is compromised, well, then the second one is probably compromised too.
Yeah.
So what we do with TrustIn is we provide you with a tool that allows you to solve that problem in a nice, simple way. Basically, once you set a password for a website, you never have to type it in again. You put it into TrustIn, you save it there, and then we allow you to automatically, with a single click, log into a web page. So the password is only ever entered once, it's saved in TrustIn, and then with one click, you're in. So what we are doing by that is saying, okay, yes, it sounds like a scary problem. I have to memorize all these really complex passwords, but we're saying, no, there's another way, and it's going to be very important to start thinking about adopting that way very quickly, because things are getting worse on the internet in terms of security. So that's what it's about, in terms of working on and solving that password problem.
Excellent. So someone comes to trustin.com. Again, we're going to leave the information in the show notes. Mm-hmm. And then how much is this going to cost somebody?
Yeah, so the first thing you can do when you arrive on the front page is there's a demo button there. So if you're not sure what it even is, you can click on the demo button and kind of kick the tires on it and see what it looks like and how it works. It runs inside your browser. It's a very simple thing. There's no complicated software to install or anything like that. It's just a bookmark that's used from your browser. The other thing you'll see on there is the ability to sign up for a 30-day trial. So one of the things that I'm competing with out there is the concept of freemium, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term or not, but it's the idea that a lot of companies out there start by giving away free product and then try to upgrade people into paid product. As an entrepreneur and as a businessman, I think it's a terrible idea. I think our industry never should have approached the idea of freemium, and it's slowly coming back from that, because when you have a customer base that's based on freemium, what's really happening is that customer base is no longer really your customer. Someone else is, because they're costing you something and you're going to have to recover that money from somewhere else. And that puts you in a bad relationship with the customer. You're stuck trying to monetize them in ways they don't necessarily want to be monetized. That problem is prevalent on Facebook today. People's private information is being leveraged for advertising and all sorts of things that they may be uncomfortable with if they actually knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So TrustIn is all about having a strict subscription model. So what that does is that sets a very clear relationship between us and our customer. You have a monthly fee that's paid annually. And what that does is that guarantees you that we are going to protect your information. We're not going to try and advertise to you. We're not going to try and monetize your activity or monitor your activity at all. You are paying for the privilege of having the best, most secure, most private service that you can have. So we have two subscription levels. One just gives you access to just the Trust tools, if that's all you're interested in. Maybe you have a different password manager or something of that nature. And the second level, the first level, the Trust one, is during this beta period. It's $6 a year. It's $12 once we exit the beta period. The second level is all about the password tools, and it adds the Trust tools with it. Wow. So that one is $24 a year, or $2 a month. Once we're out of the beta period. During the beta period, it's $12 a year.
So you're saying maximum that a customer might purchase is $24 in a year, which is, oh my gosh, which is less than, I won't compare it to Starbucks. I don't know if everyone in my audience drinks Starbucks, but that's less than half a tank of gas to protect their email correspondence, their banking information, their life savings, their retirement accounts, their pictures.
Absolutely,
go on. Just that information in there. Okay, so let me get to this. This sounds. I really want you guys to check this out. And as an expert in this area, training my senior customers, it's if the person in your life or your residents of your community are getting online, you have to consider security. It's the same thing if you were building an independent living center and you're putting doors onto an apartment, would you hesitate to put a lock on the door? No.
Absolutely.
we want to educate you, and David wants to educate you, especially over at his blog on Trust In, is that you've got to put a lock in some way, his password protection and tools to put that same on the computer. And I know every single assisted living, independent living, senior center has a computer lab. If they don't have a computer lab, they're actually building one right now. So when I go into one, I see absolutely no security, no way to protect the residents. And when I walk into a home, I see someone, most of the time, that's going to be a whole nother episode. On occasion, I see somebody checking people in at the front door. How dare you not look into security? It's like not giving your 16-year-old driver's lesson. So I could go on and on and on about this passion, and I want you guys to share. There's going to be a comment section below this, and I want you guys to share your concerns about safety. But I want to really end with this. So if someone is just they're gonna start looking into Trust In today as a possibility for their senior in their life, what's something that someone can do today? What's one action a listener can take to create a safer experience online today?
Yeah, you know what? I actually have a presentation that I give to groups. I love to talk to groups here locally in the Dallas area also about online safety.
Yeah.
And I have my top 10 list of number of things to do. I'll jump right here to the number one thing on the list.
Awesome.
Always use the most up-to-date operating system and browser available to you. Okay. If you're using Windows XP and you're using Internet Explorer 6, you are in a world of hurt out on the Internet. You really should have the latest and greatest, at least Windows 7. Windows 8 has its own issues right now, but Windows 7 and something like the Chrome web browser from Google.
Yeah.
And then once you get up-to-date software, keep it up-to-date. Make sure the automatic updates are turned on. That is absolutely the number one way that everyone on the Internet can keep themselves safe.
Okay, I think you just gave me 2 tweetables there, but the first tweetable that I'm going to add to this show is, say it one more time. What's that, Tim?
Okay, so the number one way is to keep your operating system and your web browsers modern and up-to-date.
Okay, I'm gonna put that on a tweetable because that is something that everyone can do. And if you have a grandma or mom, take the time and do that. Go help them out. Do some screen, get Team Lab or whatever, jump into their screen and do that for them. Help them out. Go over to their house. Keep your parents safe, because I'm going to tell you this. If you want to protect that life savings, that might eventually go to you, or it might not. So for at least that very selfish reason, get on there and make sure that they're having a safe experience. And, number one is I'm not, trying to make fun of that or trying to act like I'm greedy. It's just, number one, let's take care of the seniors in our life that are new on the computer. David, I really want to thank you for this time today. The conversation is going to continue right below this show. All the notes here, it's going to be on all the social media channels. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm also going to include every link that we talked about. I'm going to share it here. I'm also going to share, David, tell us, how can we connect with you? Tell us your website and your Facebook.
All sorts of ways. You can go to trust-in.com and you can go to the contact page there and submit an email if you want.
Great.
You can email us directly at info@trustin.com. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/trustin page. You can go there and like us if you like us. We'll, a lot of our informational security things will show up in your feed, so you can stay informed that way. We're over on Twitter, trust_in.com.
All right.
INN, and then you can follow us and keep up to date with all of our tweets.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to add all that information here so that you can talk to David. So you want to have access to him. Dude, it's starting at $12 for an entire year. I think it's right. It
Absolutely.
made it $6 if you guys start right now to protect your parents' retirement and communication, or there's maybe they have a photo of you in the bathtub as a child. If you don't want that to get hacked into, there's so many reasons to protect yourself. So I think this interview today, I just want to thank you so much for your time. This is invaluable information that I think even goes beyond the new user of baby boomers and seniors. It just spreads to every single generation. So guys, check it out. As always, the conversation will continue down below. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.